Good evening, everyone. My name's Connor Brannon. Today I'm going to be talking with you about reading, writing, and education, and why I feel those things are so important and why I hold them so dear to me. To start, I think that my reading, um, why I love to read so much, comes from my family. My entire family comes from a line of higher education. My mother's has a master's degree in education. My father has an MBA from the University of Arizona. My uncle went to film school in England, and my grandfather went to graduate school at Stanford. So, I mean, as you can see, I have pretty important people in my life who come from this background with some pretty prestigious levels of education. And, from a pretty young age, it was expressed to me that I would have to it was expected of me that I would reach a different level of education, not higher than anything normal, but at least a college education. It was pretty important to everyone in my family that I see past high school and into a four-year college. And here I am at DePaul, studying political science, and I'm having a blast doing it. I've definitely met some really cool people, some people that I can definitely say will be some lifelong friends. And that all spawned from really my early years when I was living under the same roof as my parents. Um, my mom was pretty good about ensuring that my brother and I were pretty well educated when we were younger. And the story that I love telling people is during the summers, we I am from California, so my family lives pretty close enough to Disneyland. We live about an hour away. Um, and so on our way up, my brother and I would be sitting in the back of my mom's SUV, her Expedition, and all jazzed up to go see Mickey Mouse, and the rest of them. And my mom would give my brother and I math books to finish. She would tell us, you guys got to finish 3 pages of this, or you're not going inside Disneyland. I don't care how much you whine. I don't care how much you bicker. It doesn't matter. Like I want to see those 3 pages finished before we go in. And, my brother and I, furious. We'd be so angry. Because all we wanted to do was go inside. It was the weekend. We didn't want to. We didn't want to do any school that we weren't required to do. Um, and looking back on it, that it was frustrating in the moment. Of course, you're a young kid. You don't want to be doing any work you don't have to. But it gave me the tools that I needed when I went into, later in middle school, 7th, 8th grade, and into high school, and now in college. I am so grateful that I was given those opportunities early to kind of get a head start on my education, because it just made things easier. It really did. There's a whole saying, 10,000 hours of practice is, that is what ensures, I think, that you're an expert in that field. And I think that speaks true to education as well. Like the more that you get exposure to different things, math, reading, writing, science, the more that you're going to learn about it. And to circle back to the reading and writing aspect of it, which this course has a lot to do with. It wasn't just the math. My mom would keep us inside during the summer when all I wanted to do was go outside and play out in the sun with my friends. Go down to the beach, do all those things. Before I was allowed to do that, I was told I had to read at least a chapter of a book, a chapter or two of a book before I could go outside. And at first, it always seemed like a punishment to be doing this. I was like, gosh, I have to grind these couple of pages out before I can do anything, before I can go have fun, before I can do anything that a normal kid's doing. And what turned in from what I thought was a punishment quickly turned into an enjoyment. Like I valued reading at a pretty young age because of how much exposure I was getting to it. And I think that comes from originally being just frustrated that I couldn't read fast, so I wasn't really understanding the information. And so the more exposure, the more practice you get at reading, I think the more value that you can actually retain from it. And once you start reading things that you actually enjoy and you're able to retain that information, I think that's where, you know, my love for reading really started to ramp up, really started to flourish. Um, and as the years went by too, I was finding books that I really enjoyed to read about subjects. You know, I found that I really love history books. Not about anything, not any subject in particular. It's really um, anything that has to do with, you know, the evolution of humanity is really interesting to me. Um, but that, along with fantasy, comes from my uncle. You know, he gave me The Hobbit when I was a pretty young kid. Um, and that had a pretty big impact on me as well. I was like, God, like, your brain is able to cultivate these imaginary places that no human will ever get to experience or set foot in, and you know, we get to live and experience them inside of our heads through books and through the written word. I think that's really important. I think that's where a lot of imagination comes from. Um, you know, there are countless books, countless pages that line the walls of my office that, you know, I'm proud to say that I finished, you know, that I've read. And when somebody comes up, it doesn't happen often, but when someone asks like, "Hey, have you read this before?" And if I have, it's, you know, I get excited when I get to say, "Yeah, like I have read that before. I've read it a couple of times." Um, but I mean, on top of all of that, I think reading, it's an incredibly important thing that you can share with other people. I think, you know, book clubs are a pretty cool thing. My friends and I are a part of one right now. And, you know, it's just another thing, you know, rather than, I don't know, I'm not going to say playing video games is any, you know, less stimulating than reading, because clearly it's not. But rather than, you know, sit down in front of a screen for a couple of hours, my friends and I get to share our what we're experiencing through books together. And I think that's really cool. Um, yeah, I think reading is incredibly important because it allows you to tell a story that no one's ever heard before. And some of the most important stories in history come from people just as ordinary as you or I. And I think that's really cool. So thank you. Yeah. Have a great one.